All it is a legal phrase. It's in every contract that you ever signed to buy a piece of real estate. You know it more as subject to approved financing. You put in the contract and you say, oh, wait a minute, what if I don't get financing? So you make your contract subject to getting financing that you approve. You also usually put it in there for a termite inspection, because you don't know if the house is termites. You want those inspected before you close on the property. Bank usually wants it subject to an appraisal. They want to know that if you're paying $150, that the house is going to appraise for at least $150 or $180. Doesn't come in at an appraisal of $90 because they're not going to give you the loan. Okay. And it's a vague legal expression that has come to mean subject to an existing mortgage. Okay. A bit of history. And the history is not to aggrandize myself, but to explain to you the process of how it used to be, how it is now, and the transition and what happened. I started buying houses in the 80s. One of the first things I sort of fell into were VA foreclosures. A veteran would use his benefits, go out and get a property, use his benefits, and VA veterans benefits usually were 100% financing to buy a single family home. And unfortunately, they didn't always make it, so they wound up going through foreclosure. And the VA had a program at that time. They would publish a list every week, and on that list would be the properties available. First they were offered to veterans, and they were offered to other individuals and groups, and in the end, offered to investors. But I called it my 500 list, because all they wanted was $500 down, and they would finance the balance at current rate for 30 years. Now, the current rate was 10%, 11%, but they still cash flow. That was the important part. So, in fact, it was so popular in 2 years, 88, 89, I bought 5 houses in each year. Drove my wife crazy, but you know. So, I bought a total of 22 properties in over 20 years. Yeah. And every one of them was assumable. So if I had wanted to turn around and sell it to anybody, they would just come in, sign the documents, go to closing, transfer the mortgage, then they would start paying the VA. So from what I heard through my contacts at the Veterans Administration, somebody in Texas decided to be sort of smart. And he bought between 400 and 600 properties, basically all at one time. Now, anybody who's ever bought a foreclosure property, it's not move-in ready. There usually are no light fixtures. It probably has holes in the walls, so they need work. Okay, this guy didn't have the ability to fix them. So in the end, what happens, he couldn't manage them, he went bankrupt, and the VA had to foreclose on the VA foreclosures he had just bought. So that changed the process for a lot of people. So they changed the rules. On many levels, real estate is a giant game with ever-changing rules. I mean, it's monopoly or cash flow, whichever one you want to associate with. But you play the game, but the rules are constantly changing. What works one time, 3 years from now, may not work. So you have to be aware of what rules are in place right now to be able to be successful in it. Okay? So you need to find a program that works for you. Foreclosures is still a great program. Foreclosures will become an even better program in the next 4 or 5 years. So a lot of people are still going to be losing their houses. The other thing is, you need to find a neighborhood that you like, that works for your program, and works for the neighborhood. So mine, a lot of mine are in Wilmot Farms, in off Plantation, in the Hillcrest area, over on Round Hill, up through there, all great little houses that rent all day long. Okay. Mortgages now, they used to be assumable with just a notification to the mortgage holder. All right, then we're gonna mess it up. Let's look at this thing from, yes.
On the VA, 20 VA mortgages, it was, let them pay out over the next.
I didn't assume any. VA originate the mortgage for me. If I had sold the properties, the mortgage would have been assumable. But every one of those that I bought, I wound up paying in full. Okay, because, you know, my business model was I don't sell. Okay, I hold, I rent out, and I refinance, buy more, not buy more, get it to be a cash situation. I never sold the property.
Did you refinance any of the VA?
No. The only refinance I did was, we took a whole bunch of properties that were VA, and we refinanced them with a commercial loan simply to get rid of the mortgages. You know, remember some of these mortgages were 7, 8, 9%, and we got a Wachovia back, it was Dominion Bank back then, Dominion Bank loan for 1 point below prime, so it was like 5. Okay, so we used that to pay everybody off. But if I had wanted to sell a house with a VA mortgage, that mortgage would have been assumable. Not qualified, yeah. The purpose of this is to understand the process. So, from a mortgage holder's point of view, they're going to get an application. Okay? They're going to do a credit check. They're going to pay stubs, the rental history of the individual, and based on all of that, it's going to go on underwriting, and they're going to approve or non-approve you. So, if someone is allowed to assume that mortgage without qualification, okay, you can sell it to your cousin Billy. You have the mortgage, your name, good credit, and everything. Your cousin Billy just got out of jail, federal prison, doing 10 years for drug distribution. He has no credit, he has no history. He's looking for a place to set up another place where he can sell some more drugs. So he just assumes your mortgage. And the mortgage company would have to deal with that. Okay? So that's one of the reasons they got rid of it. So mortgage companies added the clause, and you'll find this in every house that you've bought that has a mortgage. It's worded like this or slightly different. If all or any part of the property or any interest in the property is sold or transferred, or a borrower is not a natural person and a beneficial interest in borrower is sold or transferred without the lender's prior written consent, the lender may require immediate payment in full of all sums secured by this security instrument. So you say, wait a minute, I'm a nice guy, okay? I'm not going to abuse the system. I shouldn't be caught in this. This should be assumable. Okay? This is called the due on sale clause or an acceleration clause. So, what are you going to do with the property? Most likely, you're going to clean it up, rent it out to a good tenant, no cash flow. That's the sole purpose of doing this. So you rent it out to somebody after you've taken an application, you've done a credit check, you want to see their pay stub, you want to see their rental history, all prior to signing a new lease. And in your lease should be this clause. Resident will occupy the premises as a private dwelling unit and for no other purpose. Resident agrees that only persons whose names appear on and have signed this lease may occupy premises. Failure to comply with this limitation shall constitute a substantial breach of the lease. Remember that phrase. Occupancy is defined and shall consist of 7 days or more consecutively or 14 days or 1 calendar year. Resident will not sign this lease nor sublet the premise. You're not going to let your tenant do this. The bank's not going to let you assume the mortgage. Okay? Quid pro quo. So, now, assumable loans. I bought a number of properties over years with 100% financing. And the way you get 100% financing is you assume the first, and the owner takes back a second. But the important part is everyone was in agreement about the deal, and it was in writing. Okay? And the current subject to movement is not to let the current mortgage holder know that you're assuming their mortgage to avoid the due on sale clause. The current situation is conventional loans are not assumable. You may ask. They may want you to fill out a new application, but then you have to go through the whole process. And the answer is usually no. First person's going to answer the phone doesn't have any authority, so they're definitely going to say no. Now, certain specific loans, those generated by the VA, the FHA, the USDA, may be assumable. Not guaranteed, but they may be assumable. You have to ask, and again, you have to fill out an application. A swell of gurus touting the subject to contracts. No one was talking about this 3 to 5 years ago. Did you hear any of this discussion 3 years ago? No. When interest rates were 3%, 4%, people were just figuring how fast can I buy it, how fast can I sell it. None of this talk about you have to buy with the subject to clause. It is the current hot get-rich topic, and that's sort of what I'm giving you a warning about. Okay. And what they're telling you to do, and what you can do if you want to, is you manipulate to transfer the title of the property, get the mortgage in place. Every one of these people that's telling you the subject to, they're manipulating the title, but not the mortgage. Okay. The reasoning is that the mortgage company will not call the note due. They're too busy, they got too many other things. Go on the web and look. Okay? Someone popped into our group today with a question, I guess that they were in Ohio somewhere saying, I bought a house subject to, and all of a sudden I got a certified letter, they call him the note due, what do I do? And 99 people respond all with a bunch of worthless information. Maybe. And maybe not. It is a mathematical crapshoot. When interest rates were 3%, and you wanted to assume a mortgage because it was easy, and the mortgage was at 8%, if the mortgage holder found out, they really didn't care because they go, wait a minute, new mortgage, we're going to 3 for our investors, this guy assumes it, the note was prime, it's not current, you're paying 8%, let's just keep our eye on it and let this one slide. But times have changed. Now the rates are 8% and you're not wanting to buy a new 8%. You want to assume a mortgage that's at 3%. The banks are losing money. Why? Because home sales are down. Home prices are still up, but a tremendous amount of those are paid by cash. Okay? A mortgage company company doesn't even get involved. So mortgage companies got, wait a minute, we're not getting the return for our investors that we were. Now they're seeing all of a sudden these mortgages coming in that they're not making any money off. So would they go after somebody that's at 3% when they can make it pay 8%? Absolutely. It's a motivation to call the loans. Important fact. You may hear some of this, you may not. Buying a property on a subject to clause is not illegal. There is no statute in any state, or federal government, that says you cannot do this. It is a breach of contract between the original owner of the property and the mortgage company. What you're doing is you're violating their contract. There are numerous risks for both the buyer and the seller. And we're going to go over some of those. Because what you're doing is you're taking a mortgage without the lender's consent. Remember, when I assumed mortgages, it was with their consent. We signed all the documents, so they were aware and they had no problem. Now what they're having you do is without the lender's consent. So, if you go this route and a mortgage company gets notified, it's called a major breach of contract. With the original mortgage holder, and they can call the total amount of the outstanding mortgage due. And if it is not paid, so in other words, if they call the mortgage due, you got 120 days. Okay? If it is not paid, they have the opportunity to foreclose. And a foreclosure takes about 3 to 6 months. Okay? So if you want to buy a property, you're subject to, and you get called, you got 6 months, straighten this mess out, okay? And everything's going to be fine. But the whole reason for buying with the subject to, you want to have it for 5 years. They're not going to give you 5 years if they find out. So the question is, do you have access to the amount of outstanding principal readily available if they do call you a mortgage due? So if you get a mortgage with $80,000, they call you, do you have a way to get that $80,000 to satisfy them? If not, they will take the house back, okay? And you will have nothing on it. Now, the different scenarios are how to transfer title. I just told you it's not a good idea, but I'm going to show you how to do it. There's a land trust or a revocable trust. They're similar, slightly different. There's a real estate LLC. There's a contract for deed. And there's a corporation. These are the 4 basics. There are other variations upon this, but these are the 4 we're going to talk about today. Revocable trust. It's not irrevocable, but revocable. So someone needs to create the trust, all right? And either you do it or the person you're buying property from needs to do it. And it needs to be a unique name. It needs to be registered with the state. So the state wants to track what you're doing. You can do it on your own. Something that's complicated, you really should use a lawyer. So if you're buying a property from John Smith, the easiest thing to do is to create the John Smith Trust. That way, if the letter comes in to Mr. Smith, who's been notified that the deed is now in the name of John Smith Trust, it kind of makes sense and I'm putting it in a trust for my children in the future. A little white lie that may work. Now, a trust is a taxable entity. So therefore, you have to file paperwork. You need to file a tax return, and costs are set up. The current owner then transferred the title deed into the trust, and then the trust is sold to the new owners, you. A couple of downsides. The person money into, put the property into a trust. If they get foreclosed upon, okay, with the foreclosure, an owner has what is known as the right of redemption. After a period of time, they can, in a short period of time, they can come back, make everything whole, and they get their property back. If you put your money in a trust, you lose that. So therefore, you lose your right of redemption. You also lose the opportunity of claiming a homestead exemption. And the homestead exemption, again, protects you from creditors. Okay. You also lose access to the secondary market. So therefore, if you have a house with a first mortgage, you can go to a bank and say, hey, I'd like a second mortgage, I want to put in a swimming pool, I want to improve the inside of the house, I want to update the bathroom, secondary financing. Okay? You put this in a trust, banks are going to give you a secondary mortgage on it. To protect us from creditors. Okay. And again, the same process. You need to create an LLC with a unique name, registered with the state of Virginia. I've got 3 LLCs, 3 unique names. They're all registered with the state. I have to pay them $50 a year to keep the name, plus I have to file tax returns on every one of them. Okay. It's a taxable entity. And even though it's a rollover into my personal, it's still, by IRS and the state of Virginia standards, has to be set up. The current owner that transfers the title deed into the real estate LLC, and then the LLC is sold or transferred to the new owners. Part of the problem with an LLC versus owning it outright is when you're paying taxes for the thing, now you get to pay self-employment taxes on an property, money coming through an LLC. You don't otherwise. But you lose the exemption when you have an LLC. You've heard of contract for deed. People say, well, okay, if the bank finds out, all you need to do is put the property back in the original person's name, that now they have it, everything's copacetic, you sign a contract for deed, and you pay them, okay, and then the property is yours. Well, not really. The mortgage stays in the name of the original note holder. You then should set up a third party to hold transactions. They collect the rent, they pay the mortgage, they pay the expenses. Okay. The money is transferred to the third party who will pay all the bills. Okay. Profit is assigned to the new owner, which is you. Okay. And the tax advantages also can be assigned. They don't have to go with the original owner. Okay. When paid in full, okay, the clear title will transfer to the new owner. But you don't own the asset until the mortgage is paid off. So whereas in the other one, you have an asset because the title was transferred to your name and the mortgage wasn't. In the contract for deed, you have neither. All you have is a document with the current owner. You do control the cash flow, but not the property.
Andy?
Yep.
Is there a 4-month seasoning on contract for deed? In case a lien comes in?
There is a seasoning. They don't want it instantaneous. There is a seasoning. I don't know what the time frame is though. Where'd you get 4 months?
It's either 3 or 4 months is what I heard in the past.
Yeah, usually banks work on a 3, 6, 12 time frame. Okay. You also have a lease option. Okay. Again, you don't own the asset, but you own the cash flow. The name of the property is still in the person's name. The mortgage is still in their name. You're leasing it from them. Okay? And again, it is sold upon agreed upon price sometime in the future and you're controlling the cash flow. Tax advantages can be assigned to current owner and future owner. Okay? And then the big one is corporation. And this is even more effort to create. You create a corporation, a unique name, you register with the state, you need a lawyer, set this up. It's a taxable entity, it needs to file tax returns, state returns. The current owner transfers the title into the corporation, and then shares are sold to the new owner. One thing about corporations is they're double taxed. If the corporation is profitable, they're taxed on that profit. When they then distribute the assets in a dividend, that is taxed by the end user. You have to now create, this is for all, one of the things we just talked about, you really need to create a neutral address like a P.O. box. Insurance is the biggest thing that notifies the banks. The banks usually don't get notified that there's been a transfer of title, but the insurance documents are. Because if right now the insurer's name is in John Smith, well, that's not good enough. It's got to be in John Smith and you, or the John Smith Trust, if that's the way you set it up. But there has to be a change of title on the insurance company. Guess who gets notified when there's a change of title on an insurance company? The mortgage company. So they're notified that there's been a change of title on the insurance company. The escrow from the mortgage company or the mortgage servicer also needs to come to you at the P.O. box to be properly set up. And lo and behold, if there's a catastrophic event, house burns down, the insurance company is, if you don't do it right, is in John Smith and you. $200,000 policy. What's the likelihood of John Smith goes, yeah, you bought it, all $200,000 is yours? Very little. Okay. He's going to want a piece of that. Tax locality, in the city of Roanoke, they need to be notified where to send the bills and in whose name. One little caveat here. Many closing companies and lawyers will not close this type of transaction. My attorney won't. Okay. There's a code of ethics that the lawyers go to, and they say this is leaning on fraud, and they're not going to have their name involved. So you're going to have to find somebody that doesn't care this much and is willing to do it for you. If successfully manipulated, the title of the property will be in the new owner's name. However, this may also trigger a do all sale clause. And in addition, all of this we just talked about, the mortgage will still be in the original owner's name. You've done a lot of gyrations, manipulations, and movements of legal services. Mortgage is still in their name. So the seller's risks, you're still responsible for all the loans. You, the new buyer, miss a payment, you're behind on the payment. Whose credit gets taken? The original person who sold the mortgage. If the new buyer, this is looking at it from the seller's standpoint, the new buyer doesn't maintain the property, lets it run downhill, lets the crazy cousin come in and start selling drugs, property value goes downhill, it will decrease in value. If for some reason the loan still has to go into default, the mortgage company will foreclose against the original seller. And if they don't get all their funds, they will sue him for efficiency. So, judgment. So you bought a property from John a couple years ago down the road, everything's going well, you got by with it. John wants to go to, he's been renting, he's tired of renting. Found himself a cute little house, goes to the mortgage company and says, hey, want to get a mortgage on this? And I said, okay. You have any mortgages right now? No. I had a house I sold. I would like to get some of the nice first-time mortgage programs that are available. I mean, us in this room can't get any of that crap, but first-time mortgage buyer or second-time get 97%, low down payments, really nice. But they told John's credit, guess what? Shows up there's a mortgage on it. They can't have one. So, if the seller declares bankruptcy, so you bought it, the seller bought it, you bought it, transfer title, set the mortgage in his name, he declared bankruptcy. Okay. In the note, in the title, it says this is security on a mortgage. Doesn't matter what else you did. If that mortgage is foreclosed upon, the asset that's the underlying protection is foreclosed upon. So you made all these payments, built up the property, have a tenant in there, they can come get that house away from you. Sellers also forget what you have agreed upon. So everything needs to be in writing, notarized, kept in a secure place. And if you get somebody who really doesn't understand what they're doing, and they sell you the property, and down the road, kids get all upset. I'll go to the state attorney and say, he defrauded me. Ask Mr. Hoden how much he enjoys working with state attorneys when they've been told or they make the allegation that they've been defrauded by an investor. Is it worth the hassle?
Hey, Andy,
Yeah.
back up just a little bit to that seller wants a second mortgage. If they are truthful and say, yes, I have a mortgage on this, can they get like a home equity line of credit? Can they get?
Well, the thing is, when people sell a property,
They think it's gone.
they think it's gone. Okay, so therefore, in their mind, it's just, they have a house, they sold it, done with it. Time has passed. Now we're getting a new property. So is there a better way? Or would I do a presentation and not give you a better way? Seriously.
Yeah.
Yes. The better way. What is that? Come on, Marge, you know this.
Thinking outside the box.
Think outside the box. Okay? There are other ways to do this. First question is, why are you doing this? Why are you buying this property from somebody who's behind in their payments and trying to assume their mortgage? Because it's the hottest thing going on right now? Or because you're trying to buy the property, which is a good investment with good cash flow? The seller is most likely in financial distress, which is why he's willing to do that. Well, he has no equity. He borrowed $100,000, okay? The note, $95,000. He can't sell it, pay any of the costs. The buyer may not have the means to be able to purchase this. They may not have the credit. Banks are tightened up. Okay? Go to Bank of Bogota, you want to borrow money, 6-page documents, now 25-page documents. So it is important not important for ownership, but for control of the property. And this is the next thing we're getting into here. Everybody wants to go at it alone and be the only one. But sometimes that doesn't work. I said this, I'll say it again. You don't have to own an asset to make money with it. But it all starts with money. So, how are you going to get the money? First resource, everybody knows about, hard money lender. Inexpensive. 12 to 15%, 3 to 5 points. Certain banks have to loan in every part of every city in the United States. The law is that. Hard money lenders do not. Hard money lenders do not loan money in war zones. Big red line back in the 70s called red line. In the map, draw a big red line. In here, we don't loan money. Banks can't do that, but hard money lenders can. One of our local hard money lenders won't rent if the house is too old. Okay? It might also be a processing fee. So besides all the money and the points, they're going to charge you for paperwork. But they're easy to get. Okay? Because they're making a lot of money, and if you mess up, well, there's somebody else down the road. And they're more interested in the property than they are in the buyer and the credit union. They don't own the money on 123 Main Street. They may like Main Street. They may like 123 Main Street. They'll own the money on that. Joe Schmo is trying to buy it, maybe a 300 credit rating. They don't care about him because the asset is more important. Okay. They do have specific percentages on loaning money. You're not going to get 100%. Some will do 100% plus cost of renovations, 150%, but you have to have built a track record. Just starting out, if you're buying it for 80, they may loan you 60. In fact, they may not loan you 60. It's too low. You're buying it for 150. They may loan you 120. You need another 30 to renovate it. That's up to you. You get to get that on your own. You default, they own the property. Their first position. No other mortgages on them. Okay? That's why they're lending on the property, not on you. The second resource is what's called a private lender. Be involved in real estate but don't have the time or the energy. They don't want that 3 a.m. in the morning call about a clogged toilet. Okay? That's their biggest concern. It used to be 2 a.m., now it's 3 a.m. I don't know why the extra hour, but that's it. Okay? And by the way, in 39 years, I've had 0 middle of the night clogged toilet calls. And even if they did call, that goes right in the answering machine. I'll get to it when I get to it. Again, they're also really easy to get. Okay? These people are more interested in the buyer than the property. Okay, 123 Main Street's a nice property. They like it, but they want to know about Joe Schmo. Is Joe Schmo going to take care of this property? Is he going to build it up? Is there going to be a rate of return? Because, again, they're really not interested in being a landlord. They're not interested in the property. This moves us on to the next one, joint venture. Okay. Fancy title for partnership, I guess, if you will. There are partnerships. I like joint ventures better because a joint venture can be short-term, long-term. It's either 2 or more people. It doesn't have to be 2, it can be 3. 3 of all, you all put it together, become a joint venture. It's It's an individual who wants to get involved in real estate, but again, doesn't want property manager, but you have another person who wants to do property management, but doesn't have any cash. So you get them together, you negotiate, you figure out who does what, who does the repair, the refurbish, manage the property down the line. The time frame can be anywhere from length of a project. You have your house, you're renovating it, you'll flip it. 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, short term, or years. Let's put this together, let's rent it out. How's it going? First year went very well. What do you want to do? Go on second year. Raise the rent. Doing well. Okay. Third year rolls around, still doing great. Okay. Each party should bring something to the table. Okay. Everybody has different talents. Some know how to, you know how to fix things up. Okay. You know how to get money. Okay. You know how to work on a property. Okay. You know how to find property. You all get together and make the deal happen. Now, there's a misconception that in a joint venture, if there's two of you, oh, it's all 50-50. Again, totally wrong. Joint venture between two people, one person brings the money. It's also a great way for that person, if they have a self-directed IRA, to use their money every day.
If you're gonna do a joint venture and the other person, let's say you need $100,000 to do a deal, and one person has $80,000 and the other person has $20,000.
You want to get 123 Main Street on the rental program. It needs work, so you've got somebody work. You allocate the tasks based on your abilities, which you can do. Okay? It does require a certain level of compatibility. If you don't get along with the person who is in your joint venture, it can be antagonistic. Okay? And the other group, 10, 15 years ago, tried to buy a property. Everybody put their money in, build up this property, go sell it for a profit. There were conflicts between the individuals. Who was doing what? One person didn't like what the other person was doing. One was a designer, wanted to go this way. The other person was a property manager, wanted to go another way. And there were conflicts. So there has to be a certain level of compatibility set up. You allocate the financial aspects between the financial person, which is FP, and the investor, which is I. So, real estate has many different mathematical assets, okay? There is cash flow. There are tax deductions, there's depreciation, and there's appreciation. That's the beauty of real estate. It does all four things for you. And each of these can be allocated. So if you have an individual who's bringing all the money to the table, you say, look, in this deal, I want all of the cash flow after the expenses. You collect the rent, you pay the mortgage, the taxes, maintenance, upkeep, whatever's left goes to the financial person. That's one option. Okay. The tax deductions can go 100% to the financial person. He may say, look, I'm in a high income place and I really need the tax deduction, so I'll be willing to fund your deal. You are in a much lower tax bracket. You really don't need the tax advantages in the short term, so therefore you get zero. Biggest money in a piece of property is depreciation. You buy a $210,000 house, allocate $10,000 for land, $200,000 for the property, depreciated over 27 and a half years is 3.636% a year, $7,260 per year coming off your tax. And the person who's your financial person this is maybe what they want. Okay? They're making $30,000, you're a waiter, and you go, really making that much. A big real estate group is horrible with their tips. They don't tip you with crap, so you make $20 a night. You really don't need that depreciation. Next is appreciation. We've been kicking in about 5% a year, sometimes more, sometimes less. So, in about 10 years, that property should be about 50% more valuable than it is now. Now, we can get into a discussion about time value of money. That money in 10 years from now is really worth less than the money is now, but money is money at one point, okay? Upon refinancing, you can decide, okay, now I'm going to refinance, I'm going to sell. Now the profits are 50-50. I put in all the time, I managed it, I took care of the tenants, I took the 3 o'clock in the morning toilet calls. Okay, you didn't do crap and write checks, all right? But when we sell, we're going to do 50-50. Okay. So, Edward, that's one way to do it. If you have two people who are coming in with the money, you then, by the way, an LLC is a form of corporation. This is a real life example. Okay. Something that you all probably have now heard. That's something we usually talk about. A corporation can sell bonds. I was involved with a project where there was a substantial mortgage, and the mortgage had a balloon payment. And they had no ability to refinance. The current mortgage holder was not going to give them any more money. They were not going to refinance based on banking history. Okay. There were no other banks who really wanted to touch this. Okay. So they were like, okay, what am I going to do? I'm going to lose it to foreclosure. Lose all my equity. So what do we do? Yeah. My idea was real simple. Sell bonds to individuals. People looking to make a little money on the side. If you have a $10,000 bond with a 5-year maturity rate paying 8%, you sell 10 of those bonds and you have $100,000. For 5 years, and you don't have to make a single payment. You have that money to use for 5 years. And then when you refinance, you pay off the original and the interest that they owe. So, in subject twos, you can roll the dice. Buy a contract. There's people in this room involved with subject two. They've done very well. I know that Mr. Hogan is involved with subject two. That person has been doing real estate as long as I have. He has a tremendous amount of history, experience, and assets and contacts behind him to protect him if things go wrong. There's a lot of people in this room that don't have property one yet. So I just strongly suggest maybe this is not how you buy property one. And remember, do or do not. No try. The world is